After class one day late in my senior year, he called me on the phone and said he needed to talk to me. I figured I was getting the boot. Hundreds would start in these programs. Hundreds, literally hundreds. His average grade was a D+. 27 made it through that year, and I think that was a big year. I went in and said, Kevin, which he never called me. He called everyone Mr. or Mrs. First day of class, he'd make you write your name, put it on the table, Mr. Blanch or thing. Oh yeah, I used to sit right next to Ann Brockman, that beautiful, incredible blonde. I wonder whatever happened. That girl was amazing, and I would sit right next to her. Me and her were very close because she was the only one. She gave me cover. I was smart enough because she was the only one that could cut him off and distract him, because she was so sophisticated and so beautiful and so down to earth, and she's the only one that could get away with anything with that guy. He said, I know I have a very hard on you at times, but you are older than the other students, and I expect very good things from you. I admire you running that successful business of yours and having that foresight to educate yourself while you're making all that money. You know derivatives, and that is the hallmark of a financial brain. Who knew my financial situation? I was a self-made millionaire at a very young age, too young. I like all 27 students. That number 27, boy, isn't that something number? All them freaking great artists at 27. Had formally asked me for a letter of recommendation. That was the procedure. Everyone knew it. The procedure was you formally presented out of that corps. Yeah, that's the way of asking for a form, and every single student did it, and he didn't give them to anyone. He rarely gave one out. He said, here's a letter of recommendation, and I will give anyone who calls me the highest of verbal recommendation in any avenue you choose. I nearly fare over. To this day, that is my greatest accomplishment, and I have had many accomplishments in my life. His very sad death was devastating to me and dozens of his graduates. His death was not over heartbreaking, but it changed all of our courses in life. That man opened a lot of doors for a lot of young people and women, including me, and I think this needs to be said. We went from the #1 school of business. He's the one that got the MBA. He got a rare brain disease that summer of '99 right here. It attacked his brain. Some brilliant students in his class, they knew. He started talking to people that weren't there. They got him out there, and this rare disease attacked his brain. He was dead in 3 months. It was devastating in so many ways to this school of business. This school of business didn't even make the 301 this year. This school of business just crashed after his death. I stepped in and tried to help, and Dr. Matson, he died too also. So it was a devastating blow to Weber County, devastating blow to Weber State, to Wada School of Business, an absolutely devastating blow to a lot of people in a lot of ways. I mean, this school of business was Clyde Cooley. It was him. That's why it was the #1 school of business undergraduate in the United States. He taught at the MBA level, but he was incredible. I asked him one day why he stayed in Utah. He turned down offers from every major university in the country. He could have taught anywhere he wanted. I said, I stay here because I love Weber State, and my children and my grandchildren are here. One other thing, I love Utah's golf courses. We have magnificent, cheap, very cheap golf courses here in Ogden. That is another pet of mine. I say to my daughters over and over, golf is for young people and old people. If I ever turn into one of those middle-aged men who sit around the golf course with some worn-out, middle-aged divorced woman, take a 3-wood and or a 9-iron, hit me right behind the ear as hard as you can. Swing. Dr. Cooley was a widower. He calmly would stop by my job sites to visit me if he saw us working. I had the biggest stucco business in Weber County area in the early 90s while I was going to school. It was very common for me to walk right off the scaffold into class. I did all the stucco work. I redid the brownies. I was the only laughing plaster guy left in this. I had a sidewalk pass right here. I mean, this is a university at that time of about 12,000, 13,000. You know, I drive all over these sidewalks, whatever. I did all the plaster stucco work on the campus in those days. I had a sidewalk pass to drive on the sidewalks, very rare. Dr. Cooley loved it. A working class student that could get through his class, and not to mention I traded derivatives like mad in those days, futures and options. He knew it, he loved it. He had been teaching his 420 class this summer quarter. Out of the blue, he started asking who was the man standing over there. No one was there. The students, like all Clyde Cooley students, were smart, very smart. They knew. They ran for help immediately. He was in the hospital that day. His brain was under attack by some strange infection or cancer. The most incredible mind I have ever known was being eaten away by something. I went to his house in Bountiful and saw him that fall. It was horrible, and the greatest mind I had ever knew was dissolving away to the point of a child's mind. I've heard rumors it was Mad Cow. He had been in Europe. I don't think anyone knows. Dr. Madsen knew I had been working as a derivative specialist and analyst. Here I was trying to make up 2 entry-level classes, which this was one of them, and the professor was asking me for help. He did not understand the derivative portion of the class. He had been forced to teach his class and Dr. Cooley's class. It was a very tough situation for him, or anyone for that matter. I agreed to help. Here I'm freaking, they're trying to make me go back, finish 2 classes in the undergraduate program, and I'm teaching in the MBA program. The professors. 2 days later, I got the call, the worst call I've ever received. To this day, they altered my life forever. My wife and I was separated. My living in the big house and her just 1 mile away living in the little house right next to my mom and dad, the house I live in now. On the family farm where I live today, it was Teresa. She was crying, "It's Digger." I had the same feeling as when Clyde Cooley spoke those words just days before I heard them again. The tone told me he was dead or close to it. I knew it. I was doing a major restoration project at the time at the Ben Lomond Hotel, now the Radisson Hotel in Ogden, right on the same exact spot the machine gun was invented to the inch, right to the inch of Browning's shop. Right next door, the 1905 Masonic Temple I restored, right on the same central ground as the Orpheum Theater, as the majestic mountain right there. Ben Lomond in my backdrop as I do. That mountain was drawn by William Hodgkins on a piece of napkin. That mountain was named after the Eccles as they came from the Glasgow slums of Scotland with the Wattises, with the Mackays. I mean, it all ties right in there, right on that sacred said spot of ground. I just happened to be working there, restoring a bunch of stuff for the Radisson Hotel. Later I find out it was ABL, 100% dead. He had acute belastic leukemia from being nuked in the Nevada test site. He, my father, a longtime best friend, was an atomic veteran, a drafted Marine in 1951. They had nuked him in the desert, like all 40,000 dead from leukemia. I was devastated. I had talked with Dr. Madsen and told him I would continue to help him, but I was dropping out of the program. I spent most of the fall at the University of Utah's Grand Hospital by his side. The other half I spent trading derivatives in the Wattis lab. Mike Vaughn was the dean then. He stood behind me 100%. He was partly managing the school's giant endowment, and like every responsible money manager in the 90s, he had to eat, sleep, drink the market. It was going crazy. This endowment is massive here, as Wattis Construction was bought by General Electric in 1971 and made gargantuous millionaires, as Berkshire Hathaway, when Buffett bought it, which they used to have a picture of Buffett with his arm around me as we get to go every year. Bill Childs donated massive amounts. All this old, incredible wealth right here. He was managing that money. I was helping him. I would give him what info I was gathering from New York and all over. I was trading Novell's turnaround as a personal largest holding for the firm I worked for. Novell, Connexton, and 3Com Palm arbitrage. I had sniffed the arbitrage out early, very early. 3Com had bought Palm and U.S. Robotics and had a major office here in Utah. 3Com was going to spin out Palm. Palm was going public. I knew plenty of investment bankers on Wall Street, and I knew this was going to be the hottest and the very red hottest IPO in history of the market. We were in the heat of it all. In the United States in 1991, we were in the finally most aggressive stages of the great technology revolution. I had lived every single inch of the ride, trading options starting in 1984. I was rich by now. My stock portfolios were large. I had accounts with every brokerage firm on the Wasatch and Wall Street. I was online trading when no one even knew what online trading was. Dr. Madsen knew it. Mike Vaughn knew it. I was a multi-millionaire in those days. Mike would keep the side door of the lab, which is an emergency room only, he would keep it open so I could run back and forth with the television on the wall. He had stalled that year so I could watch the CNBC and trade derivatives. That TV's right there. In 10 different accounts at the same time. He would open the Wattis building doors in the lab early for me. 6 o'clock, I'd be right here. He and I discussed turning students the real situation off of a trading room. The situation was I was going to donate X amount of money to the school business, and we were going to start a program here called the Kevin Blanch, Clyde Cooley Derivatives Trading School, and we were going to set up a platform in here, and I was going to fund the whole thing. That was the plan. He said we will call it the Kevin Blanch Clyde Cooley Trading Room, or Highland says no, we'll call it the Clyde Cooley Kevin Blanch Trading Room. Looking back, it was one great idea because all the students go to Wall Street. That is how it is, a room with computer screens. That is the trading platforms of our time, not the floor of the exchanges. I got no sleep that fall of 1990. Why? It was a giant blur. I was awake in my giant grand award-winning house going through a divorce, my house I had designed while an art major at Weber. I was working on a double major, fine art and finance, in the early 90s. Jane, the brilliant art professor, was encouraging me to stay in the art program. That day I switched. I made my decision, 1995, to go to finance and leave the art behind, which Jane begged me not to do so, as did Arthur Adelman. I went to him both and told them of my decision. I will never forget the line Arthur Adelman said, "Oh, how disgusting. A life of nothing but making money. What a horrible existence." How true those words are. I see his work as he is for sale. You know, he said that, but now I see his work got it for sale up here in the library. But I always think about that line of his, because I was the art major, you know, and I pin my stuff on the board and he would just go, whoa. You know, Jen Catlett would just go, whoa, look at that mind of yours, you know. And he says, oh, how disgusting, a life of making nothing but money. Boy, did he call it. Boy, was it, what a metaphor. My big grand house on 10 acres I had built mostly with cash and decorated with fine antiques from all over the world. I had money all through the 90s. I love fine art and antiques. The house I had built was built around the art 19-foot ceilings, an open catwalk, the giant handmade staircase by my amazing skilled cousin Todd Blanch, a large screen television hanging on the wall before anybody even had a flat screen television hanging on the wall, a hot tub in the raised platform overlooking the grand living room, a baby grand in the entryway, who, by the way, ended up with a .357 bullet hole lodged in the C-sharp wood striker. Now that is a metaphor, a whole nother book someday. Yeah, my house got shut up. A magnificent structure with curved walls, lath and plaster, curved scrolled walls interior, inside and out, 96 windows, 2 towering chimneys out of the green roof, the house white and green scrollwork, real stucco with red and sandstone scrollwork on the windows, a handmade Victorian-made stained glass window with blue herons, the native birds of West Weber, where the house set on, Highway 39's infamous death curve. I was going through a divorce. I had money and I had the house. I had a brand new trucks and cars. I had attention from emails galore. I would spend all my time watching the markets from 2 a.m. when the foreign feeds would come into the U.S., then being in the Wattis lab at 6 a.m. to position all my accounts and have my finger on the keyboard ready to trade. Many morons at Weber at the time thought I was a day trader. I was as far from a day trader as W is to intelligence. I was an arbitrage derivatives specialist and a hedge fund hedger in the classical context. I, in those days, to this day, trader was like a 72 Ford Pinto to a Bugatti. The market was full of nuts that fall. A good derivatives specialist has to eat, sleep, drink the markets. When the volume is high, and in the fall of 1999, the volume was psychotic. My father was dying. I was totally heartbroken. He was everything to me. I mean everything. He looked like Elvis Presley with muscles, a wit like Mark Twain, a deductive thinking brain like Floyd. He was a player of the stock market, a working class dirt contractor on a farm who had dropped out of school in the 10th grade. Had later went to Weber State and got a degree in math. When I was in high school, he did that. He had built a portfolio from nothing into hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was brilliant, like Kylie, both of them brilliant minds, fading away, both dying at the same time. My Aunt Margaret, who I adored, she just died earlier that summer, right here from the D School of Business. She was the head surgical nurse there. As I come, lots of doctors in our family. She was brilliant. She died then too. I was very close with her. I look back on this now and I think it is why I had so much energy and strength and focus in regard to the derivatives market that fall. I turned one of my accounts from $1,700 into over $500,000. That was just one account. It was my mind's escape from the pain of my father dying in the hands of the American ignorance, thrown the divorce on top of that, the girl I had been with for 19 years and had 17 years and had my children with. I got her pregnant the night John Lennon was killed. Exactly 30 years almost to this minute as I write this now. Wow. And I did not get reminded by Howard that day has always stood in my mind. It is a very metaphorical good giant. World's cultures, maybe the biggest of the conservative movement of our time, is Howard Cosell, and answered it to the world. That night I really believe it was the beginning, I believe that was the marquee event, that the great conservative movement was born, and the end of the great progressive movement by Mariner Eccles here. I was a very It was a very troubled and off relationship the whole time, her and I. Beautiful girl. Her and I had, what a crazy madness, that whole thing. One of our 3 dynamic daughters, Ashley, my oldest, the designer, the artist, living in Manhattan now. The one conceived the night of Lennon was murdered by a twisted, ignorant religious freak. The daughter who my father would say, Ashley, you're doing a great job raising Kevin. So much truth. My father raised those girls. You know, he really did. I think that's why they're such incredible young females. Is he raised them, not me. He really did. He used to always say to her, Ashley, you're doing an incredible job raising Kevin. It was funny. True. She was more mature than I was in the 90s. I was up trading like mad until 2 p.m. when the markets closed every day. I hated to see the weekends come in those days. No trading. Then straight to the University Hospital, 40 miles away in Salt Lake City. I was helping Kyle Madsen as much as I could. Had me teaching a 2-week class and giving the students a $10,000 paper trades, letting them buy options and trading their returns. I am sure I created a few monsters that November. I tried to tell Dr. Madsen that the 2 weeks right in front of expiration was probably not the best 2 weeks, but he said it's the only 2 weeks we can do this. He was a very personal man with me and all of his students. He was the type of man people loved. It would only be a short couple years that he would be under attack by lung cancer. He was a staunch Mormon and did not ever smoke. He was overweight, but he was a staunch, more brilliant guy. He taught here. He was young. He got lung cancer and died right here. You know, the whole thing is so ironic. The market has raged, gone crazy. Novell and other companies were late reporting. They reported earnings in November instead of, like most, reporting in October. The school business was alive with Novell and Iomega. They were the stocks here. They were the companies here. Everybody went to work for them here. This was their school business. The said students' returns were ridiculous at the end of the 2 weeks. My derivative teaching class, they all got an A, the entire class. How could you not make money? Novell that year reported the day before expires were worthless. Options would go on the Delta for him, percent change over time. You are buying nothing but time. So they were no time left, so they cost pretty well nothing. As Clyde, Cooley, and Little Dick, the midget, you want Kevin to take an entire math class when he can do the Delta formula in his head? Are you crazy? You should retire now, along with the several other not so nice sentences. That was Clyde, what he told Dick about me. So the class reports to me that last day, out of the 70 students in the class, the smallest return was $27,000 from the said $10,000. Most of them were $50,000 range or higher. I told Kyle we have created gambling nuts like me. That November, Novell reported that they would come out to the beginning of the last stand. I bought a bunch of options, calls, and puts, a stride or a short, 100 up, 20 down. A strip, stride, straddle, as we know straddles, 1 up, 1 down, strides, 2 up, 1 down. There are variation thereof, the option trading strategies. The equity jumped well over 10% in one day. I traded so many options in those days, I commonly got calls from different firms telling me I was extending their limits. I would call the CBO of the Chicago Board of Options Exchange. The market request secretaries knew my name and my voice. Hi, Mr. Blanch. What strikes and expirations? What equities are you requesting today? I would tell them 100% of the time they were there the next day. I know. The option traders in New York were notorious crooks. I knew that, so I tried to stay with the equities traded on the Chicago Board of Options floor, the last and the only true open outcry madness floor. There are more millionaires made and lost to this day than anywhere on earth, literally, and ex-NFL players, very physical types, aggressive traders. They all live in about 50 to about 50. It kills them. You know, that freaking is intense down there. I've been there. It is intense. The Amex in Lower Manhattan, as they call it, the curbside exchange, right behind the Trinity Church. Now the Euronext, the old curbside exchange, and the trading desk at many firms were making market on equities for crooks. But they had not yet took over the options market, but they were beginning to. That's right when this whole madness began. I was starting to see the corruption get into the derivatives markets. One day I was trading an equity, getting ready for a report. Computer Associates, CA, the options were trading in New York on the Amex. I knew they were crooks. I went in the rounds for them on a stop order on Netscape they had screwed me on. I put in a stop order on a position as short of Netscape at 115. A stop order at 129. I called on my cell phone 2 hours later. Netscape was trading at $88. I said, I need to sell to cover my short. I'm very sorry sir, you were stopped out at 129. I said, what was the high trade of the day? You got it, 129. So I dug in and checked all the trades of the day. A trader had traded one share at 129 so he could call me out. That trade screwed me out of over $50,000. Let this be a lesson to all stop orders. Don't use them. Back to the CA trade, Computer Associates. My friend David Weeks, a young finance student, would trade right next to me. A very bright young man. He would go to the computer lab phone and call out quotes while I sat in front of the computer screen and traded options. The computer screens were slow quotes in those days. The phone quotes were all Scottrade friends in Salt Lake, Bill and Mark, and their youngest assistant, who was in the school business at the time, were much faster quotes. Right at 1:50 Mountain Time, in just 10 minutes to go, I bought $1,200 worth of puts, playing down on Computer Associates equity, playing a hunch that they would miss their number and the market would make them pay. David yelling across the lab with the broker on the phone. Boom, I got it across. Comes the confirmation. We waited 20 minutes. Later, there was a number they missed. Not only did they miss, there was an article out that night, a news story from the CEO being under investigation. I knew I had a big score. The next morning, as usual, I opened up the lab. I logged into my account. There I had a broken trade confirmation. So I called Bill, and he says, the Amex floor said the trade never went through. I said, I have confirmation. Anyway, to make a long story short, the floor trade had obviously saw the number and started cheating and lying, and the way the tune of millions of dollars. They broke the trade. Cost me over $30,000. The crook floor trader and the firm he was working for made millions. They were crooks. But like the good old racehorse handicapper, we know that going in. So that is a big part of the handicappers' better and derivative traders' mentality, which all derivative traders are horse players. It is the exact same mindset, pointing over past numbers, hypothesizing the future and placing a bet on the said future with huge compounding possibilities. What did the big E, which made a big A, who stopped the big J's and the N's, say? How they run, and myself say nothing about compounding. A few days later, in 1990, I said to Dr. Madsen, have you heard how Dr. Cooley was doing? He said, did I not tell you? He died last week while you were in Vegas. I was so pissed off at Dr. Madsen, he knew it. I told him, you fucking kidding me? You never said shit. He knew I was mad. Dr. Madsen, I'm sure he felt very intimidated by Dr. Cooley's past. Who would have not have? He was gone. The school made a very little of it. I was still sitting and I'm appalled now to the great professors where Dr. Chi, the stats professor, the nightmare as everyone who went through his school knows what I'm talking about. He and I was walking through and talked about was I was recovering from my falls. We become good friends. Dr. Chi and I had become good friends. Was so shaken by Dr. Cooley's death, retired. Mike Vaughn became the provost. Dr. Vaughn got the boot. He was the great risk management, very, very smart man. Right here. This school made shit of it. This school made shit of it. They don't even have they have a little picture on the wall. It is an absolute outrage that this school has not built a statue, has not monumental this guy. This school, because they got this guy named Hanley right in here who was given this gift job or other. He's a moron. He couldn't tell you a derivative from a balance sheet. Has no clue. And they were all intimidated by Dr. Cooley. They all, like, you know, a bunch of losers, a bunch of fucking losers. When Dr. Cooley died, the entire school business died. At the exact moment it was over, it was over from that day, and the entire pinned on the dean's wall Weber State Water School business has not even made the Princeton's top 301 review. I told the secretary, woo woo, you made the top 301. Wow, they were bragging about this last year. Dr. Cooley would roll over. Their MBA is like high school. I taught in their MBA. What a joke. It tumbled downhill as Dr. Cooley's undergraduate was 10 times what their MBA is. A guy named the dumbest professor in any university history. The man is dumb as dirt, was running much of the show. The second dumbest professor I was ever running. I want to give that prick's name. He doesn't deserve mention. He's still freaking here. Russell. And this is man who commonly brags about being one of the biggest losers, crooked contractors in history's best friend. He would give things, oh, I'm friends with this This guy who owned Cal-U Construction, who had a fraudulent bank. This guy, everything he touched is just fraud, falling to pieces, whatever, and brag about him being his friend. This guy is a pathetic loser. I mean high school teacher dumb. No offense to high school teachers. You know the ones I mean. You all have a few who you work with. The school went from the #1 school and the top 10 year after year, every year of the water school business. I think they were ranked 255 last year. They didn't even make the 301 this year. So in 1990, I kept training in the lab. My teaching for the quarter was done. I would drive to the hospital every day. He was getting worse. They had chemoed him so hard he had blistered his tongue. The beautiful brown pigment of his eyes was gone. His eyes looked like the Great Salt Lake we lived next door in the winter, gray, dull, and colorless. The doctors were telling him he had hope. The United States government is still guinea pigging him after 46 years. Michael Clyde, 2 years younger than Dwayne. My father's brother had been stationed at the Benetcon for a long time. He was a very high-ranking officer in the Air Force, a 30-year career, the second shirt at Colorado Springs. He said one day to me, even I run into blocked doors, and I have very high clearance credentials. The government is tracking all the atomic veterans, all 40,000 of them now, and their children's health records. This is one of the giant experiment of life's atomic nuked humans as they are guinea pigs. I felt in my soul that this was the end coming. I think this needs to be said. I wrote this in 2010 before I got leukemia, and I filed lawsuits. It's so ironic that I get leukemia and you guys have followed my fault as I'm fighting for my life right now. Chapter 7, Atomic Nuke Our Own. I'll get back to Dr. Cooley. Kevin Blanch.